inside my own head. Now, it may sound silly to you, but it's been very, very helpful to me.
Yeah, this is Sulak, and right now all the dogs are together in the kitchen, and they hate each other, and at any moment they are going to savage each other and go "Rawr, rawr," and make all kinds of flippin' racket, and this is what I have to deal with all day. So, anticipate that. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but you know, you never know. So, today, what do we got going on? Multiple levels of hearsay upon hearsay, that's one thing. Another thing is North American Damage Control. The editorial board kind of tears into NAFTA for reasons that make sense to me. And a little follow-up on China and its critics, particularly from that European soccer team. One particular European soccer player. And then they have some stuff about small business and the fight for $15 an hour. Now, I can make arguments to people about whether minimum wage is actually to their benefit, because when people describe it as, you know, getting a raise, I say, actually, no, I don't think it's honest, or not honest, but at least not accurate to characterize a minimum wage hike as a raise. And then I'll make my arguments, and they tend not to agree because I didn't frame it as Orange Man bad. So if I said, well, Donald Trump says it's a good idea, then they'd be like, no, it's absolutely not a good idea. So that's the tack I should probably take in the future. But yeah, we're not going to talk about that. I just wanted to make that little one-liner joke. And let's see. Bad capitalism and good socialism. The real question is whether each is based on liberty or coercion. So it sounds like a nuanced perspective. We'll get to that. But we will begin with multiple levels of hearsay upon hearsay. What the media doesn't want you to know about the Horowitz report by David J. Garrow. Most news coverage of the Horowitz report has been minimized or ignored. Its most devastating aspects, granted the Inspector General's account, doesn't make for easy reading. Hey, sit down. Sit down. I'm trying to take a seat. There we go. It's repetitive to a fault, and its use of vague identifiers, Case Agent 1, Supervisory Intel Analyst, Primary Subsource, or PSS for short, rather than names, makes its narrative insistently soporic. I don't know that one. Soporic. I'll ask Google. Then again, many journalists seem determined not to explain how the report vitiates the Steele dossier and discredits its author, Christopher Steele, a former British spy who peddled third-hand hearsay to gullible paymasters at both the opposition research firm Fusion GPS and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. With a few exceptions, journalists have eagerly embraced former FBI Director James Comey and former Deputy Director Andrew McCabe as guardians of democracy rather than culpable apologists for dire threats to Americans' civil liberties. Yeah, I heard Victor Davis Hanson talking about some of these things. He was just on American Thought Leaders a couple days ago. They put that video out on YouTube, and I really enjoyed his perspective on it. He had some excellent points. His prediction is that people are going to be very much distancing themselves from Christopher Steele and this whole thing. And as far as like following up, like people are probably going to be called in to testify as to like how did this happen, and their defense is going to be, oh well, I didn't know that my subordinates were doing this, and it's hard to prove anything, so it's going to be what it's going to be. But yeah, to continue, every American who cares about civil liberties should peruse at least pages 186 through 93, that's not going to happen, wherein the Inspector General's staff shreds the Steele dossier piece by piece and indicts the Bureau's reliance on visibly shoddy work that any unbiased intelligence professional would have quickly discarded. You know, I might do that. I might just get a copy of this. I could probably just Google it and then read those pages on the show, the Sulak Show or the Purple Room. I haven't been to the Purple Room in a minute. I was going to call the show the Purple Room, but there's many other rooms in this galaxy, like my Ready Room. So, and I got little trophies. Yeah, it's nice. But yeah, I might do that as one of my episodes. Mr. Steele confessed in a 2016 FBI interview that one of his top sources was a boaster and egotist who may engage in some embellishment. Mr. Steele had asserted to interviewing agents that this person, whom he variously called Source D, Source E, a Trump associate, and Person 1, we'll go with P1 for short, was the source of both the dossier's most salacious claims about Donald Trump, I remember those claims, and the information on which the FBI relied to obtain a warrant to spy on former campaign aide Carter Page. Yeah, they're keeping it clean for the newspaper, but that salacious claim was that he was with Russian prostitutes and urinating on them. My goodness. I'm assuming that's what they're referring to. Yet Mr. Steele's primary subsource, we'll abbreviate that to PSS, contradicted those claims, telling the FBI that P1 didn't furnish any salacious information. Mr. Steele claimed that PSS and P1 had met 2 or 3 times, but PSS said their only contact was a single 10 to 15 minute phone conversation, etc., etc. And it goes further into a breakdown, and he refers to specific pages, and it's all very boring. But I think this is kind of folding out in front of you, and you can look at the report. But as we even saw with the Mueller report, people had claims about what was true, and then they were going to base it on the Mueller report, but it just wasn't in there. But people got very liberal with their, not liberal, they got very fanciful with their interpretations. And imagine it's just going to continue on in this case. Or refer again to Adam Schiff talking about, well, Mr. Trump's going to manipulate another election. And it's just like, well, what are you referring to? What is the evidence? Was it in the report? What are you talking about? It's like, well, it doesn't matter because I got the microphone and you don't. So you will listen to every word I have to say. That's an Adam Sandler reference. So yeah, that's multiple levels of hearsay upon hearsay. Summary of the Horowitz report. So yeah, I will refer back to that one, and we'll see. I think I might do a little special on that. It sounds like it's very boring reading, but as a service to the public, I, Governor Sulak, may just well do that. So I'm gonna go look at the fish. Very predictable swimming patterns, just in a circle. They don't vary. North American damage control. New NAFTA is worse than the old deal, but is at least a political relief. Because I think he had threatened to scrap it completely, and they're pleased that he did not do that. Donald Trump is the most protectionist American president since Herbert Hoover, so one of our trade policy goals over the last 3 years has been damage control. That's the best case now for supporting Trump's revisions to the North American Free Trade Agreement to gain votes from Democrats, or NAFTA. That's what they call NAFTA. The good news is that the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade deal puts the rest of Mr. Trump's threats to abandon the 1994 agreement and puts to rest threats to blow up the continental trade. A new deal preserves most of the tariff-free trade in the original NAFTA. That's no small matter when through October this year, U.S. trade with Mexico and Canada exceeded $1 trillion. We're going to just skip all the specific things. They talk about dairy, they talk about steel, they talk about, if America thinks illegal immigration is a problem, watch what happens if Mexico slides into Argentine or Venezuelan socialism. Economic integration with the U.S. is important insurance against Mexico becoming a failed state. Yeah, there seems usually to be a connection between those things. But this is a worry apparently about President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, who I said I might read some articles about. I've been seeing some things, but I have yet to do. The shame is that in many respects, the New Deal is worse than NAFTA. The New Deal tries to steer auto investment with new rules of origin that 75% of the car's content must be made in North America, and this makes it less competitive worldwide. Also reducing the competitiveness is a new rule mandating that 40% of auto qualifying for tariff-free trade in the region has to be produced by workers earning $16 an hour. Mr. Trump is using the mandate to make Mexico less competitive for car production. I'm not reading this straight through. I'm just kind of... if American activists complain about labor practices at a plant in Mexico, the U.S. trade representative can call for a multilateral panel to rule in the dispute. If the three-person panel rules in favor of the complaint, the U.S. can then impose tariffs in escalating stages. The risk is that this will produce a flood of new complaints. And there's problems that the New Deal mandates that 70% of steel used in North American vehicles must be made on the continent, and in 7 years, that share will also have to include so-called slab steel that is now often imported before it is finished into specific steel products. So yes, it continues, it goes on. I'm not going to read all of the details. But yeah, I wonder if how flexible those numbers are too, if they need to like, you know, they can probably just tweak those as circumstances change. Because like a certain number of dollars per hour, that can be relevant for a while, but then the economy will shift and it'll be like, well, that's not enough or it's too much. Probably going to be not enough. Dollar's going to keep blowing up. But we'll see. We will return to look out the window and ponder this one. Europe's Daryl Morey moment. China again uses its commercial strength to silence critics abroad. Yeah, that's making you unpopular. Millions of Americans saw the ugly side of communist China this year. The ugly side of communist China. Sip of my coffee. When Beijing retaliated against the NBA over Houston Rockets executive Daryl Morey's Twitter support for Hong Kong demonstrators, China's extraterritorial attacks on free speech didn't sit well with the U.S. public, and now Europe faces the same intimidation. On Friday, soccer star Mesut Ozil of the British Premier League criticized China. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Watch my previous video. I talked about this at greater length. Mr. Ozil, a German native of Turkish descent, is one of the world's most famous Muslims, and the Chinese quickly criticized his comments. Arsenal, Mr. Ozil's team, has significant business interests in China and distanced itself from the comments, but hasn't disciplined him publicly. A coming Arsenal match was pulled from Chinese state TV, and Mr. Ozil's fan community in China was shut down. A Chinese propaganda outlet declared, "Ozil, you are worse than Mori." China may be worried in particular because Mr. Ozil is close to Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. See, it's Erdogan, but I think they just say Erdogan, who was best man at the athlete's wedding this summer. The Turkish government has sometimes spoken up for the Uyghurs, but Mr. Erdogan has been quieter recently as he tries to improve ties with Beijing and avoid economic sanctions. Because, yeah, they're kind of in the middle there. The episode shows the Turks, they're kind of like our not ally. Like, they're part of the alliance, they're part of NATO, but they're also not really our buddies in a lot of regards. So, it's complicated. But yeah, that's a little update on that issue. But yeah, I think people really don't appreciate that the way things are in the modern economy, modern world, where we may have free speech protections here in the United States, allegedly, but you look at China saying, "Oh, no, we don't want you to say that," and then everybody shuts up because, you know, LeBron James needs to make money, and Nike basically owns the NBA, and similar problems with soccer leagues, apparently. So, you know, it is what it is. And then we have... Come on, phone. See, I like the journal, but the app crashes fairly often. This one, Bad Capitalism and Good Socialism. The real question is whether each is based in liberty or coercion, by Walter E. Block. Is socialism the enemy of the civilized order? It depends on what kind of socialism we are discussing. There are several varieties, not only one. And there's one variety that, of course, has never been tried, where everything is controlled by, if we only just had everybody behind it and no opposition, that would be true socialism. If only we assimilated everybody like the Borg, then true socialism would be achieved. I don't feel like that's what he's getting at here, but I'm just jumping in. If it is the version calling for government ownership and control of all the means of production and the complete nationalization of all industries, then yes, socialism is the work of the devil. Ooh, strong language. The app crashed again, so I'm going to have to reboot it, but I'll continue with the paragraph. All we need to do is demonstrate this. To demonstrate this is to mention economic basket cases like Venezuela, East Germany. Close the app, unfortunately. Bad timing. Well, I'm going to have to get another cup of coffee anyway. I'll finish this paragraph at the very least. East Germany, Maoist China, and the USSR, they produced dire poverty and the deaths of millions of innocent people. And on that note, I will leave you in suspense while I get another cup of coffee. And, I don't know, I feel like if people just bag on socialism as a whole, it'll turn people off, and people bag on capitalism as a whole, it'll turn people off. It's, this is the thing, I was talking to my mother, and she was sharing ideas about something that, I can't remember the specifics, but it was kind of a critique about capitalism not taking care of people, but it was more nuanced than that. But just like seeing that as part of the article, I wanted to just kind of shut it down and put my fingers in my ears and be like, la 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 la, like, oh, here's an unnuanced perspective, but it wasn't the case. So sometimes you just gotta hang in there, and I don't know what I'm getting at, but we will go to intermission here while I get a cup of coffee. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. There was a second, just as historically accurate, a definition of socialism as the first. It is predicated on the Marxian nostrum, from each according to his ability to each according to his need. If this goal is attained on a coercive basis, then yes, this is compulsory egalitarianism is surely uncivilized. I'm all tongue-tied today. It amounts to stealing from the innocent rich. Yeah, but see, here's the thing with a lot of these rabid socialists, and I've spoken to several of them. Their opinion is that if you are rich, you are guilty of something. You didn't earn what you got because you got more than me, and it's okay to resent you because you have money. Now, if you put it that starkly, they'll say, oh, well, that sounds terrible, so it couldn't necessarily apply to me. But that's basically what they're saying, and they'll gloss over it with, verbal patchworks. Yeah. But that's basically the attitude. I'll have this little story. There's a little man-made lake nearby, and a bunch of rich people built their houses around it, and it's built around a very beautiful vista. And if you go up, it's a private area though, but they're not too biggest sticklers about it. And you go up there on the dam, and you can see, taking the natural splendor. And I went up there with somebody, and they were just like, oh, these rich people and all their houses, if you just get them out of the way. And I was like, well, they're the ones that built this. So if they didn't, put money, like, I've actually talked to some of the people that own houses there and are on, like, the home ownership board or whatever, like how much money they pay to have water put into there. Like, I've talked to these people, but just this person decided to be resentful just because people with a lot of money exist, and they're just like, oh, they're so, it's ugly. It's like, oh, well, I don't know. It was just goofy to me. To continue. But suppose people agree to live under this principle. That principle being from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. Ayn Rand might not like this too much, but if it is truly voluntary, then instead of being incompatible with civilized principles, it is a paradigmatic case of them. Paradigmatic. That is, the rich agree to be expropriated in favor of the poor. Are there any such institutions that actually flourish? I feel like that's what they're going for in California, but they are, $30 billion in debt as a state? I might need to add a zero there. I don't know. Here are a few. The convent, monastery, kibbutz, commune, socialist association, cooperative. I teach at a Jesuit school, and all members of this order subscribe to the from each to each philosophy. True, kibbutzim were initially subsidized by the state of Israel and are now a shadow of their former selves. And Robert Owen's commune in New Harmony, Indiana is no longer in operation. But neither does every business last forever. Then there is a average American family. It too lives according to this Marxian doctrine. The 3-year-old girl eats, gets toys, and is clothed, not in accordance with her ability to earn income, but based on her needs. Capitalism is likewise divided into several varieties. If it is free market capitalism, we are contemplating, or as near to that system as we can approach in this vale of tears, then this, along with voluntary socialism, is the very foundation of the civilized order. All boats rise on a tide of profit maximization and untrammeled entrepreneurship as long as personal and property rights are respected. So yeah, there's the thing. There's the true, the kind of the equivalent on the other side of true socialism has never been tried. That's something that people say a lot when you talk about previous socialist or Marxist, communist regimes and their very consistent rate of failure. People say, well, it just hasn't been tried. But then people look at capitalism and its problems and they say, well, the free market has never really been tried. And it's just like, well, they're just kind of ideals and fantasies in some ways. Like complete deregulation, that's a problem. Total economic control, that's a problem. So, yeah. The experiences of places with expansive economic freedom, such as the US, Switzerland, Hong Kong, Singapore, and yes, Bernie, Scandinavia too, give ample testimony to this claim. Yet under the veneer of economic freedom, markets have their dark side too, crony capitalism. It's alliterative and sinister. Uber is brutalized, I added that last part. Uber is brutalized by the taxi industry in the name of protecting the public. Young women who braid hair are hassled by licensed beauticians. Domestic manufacturers lust after protective tariffs. Farm states tried to outlaw dyeing margarine yellow. Labor unions champion minimum wage laws to price their unskilled competitors out of the market. And also, occupational licensing. This is what libertarians rail against. Occupational licensing. As Adam Smith wisely said, under this type of capitalism, people of the same trade seldom meet together, even for the merriment and diversion, but the conversation ends in a conspiracy against the public, or some contrivance to raise prices. I remember that being a quote for capitalism in Civilization 4, and Leonard Nimoy read it. It was great. That's a good game. Okay, to finish. No, not all versions of socialism are the enemy of humanity and decency, nor are all types of capitalism their friend. It all depends on which variety of each we are discussing. So it looks like his varieties, the good kind, is based on, as long as it's not coercive. That seemed to be one of the gists. If it is free market capitalism, or as near as we can get to it, this is the very foundation of the civilized order. So yeah. Now we'll get on to the last one. But yeah, I liked that one. It actually didn't really say much conclusively. It just kind of went on, but it didn't roundly condemn either system. It was just like, well, whatever floats your boat, I guess is kind of the gist. I'm going to return to my ready room for this last one. Blocked. Can't sit in chair. Chair is inaccessible. Gotta approach from this side. Okay, I guess the other chair. This last one. Shouting down is not a part of free speech. And this is a letter, and I think it's responding to something else. Ms. Murray's letter can't obscure the fact that this restriction on academic freedom was one of the most shameful events in the Holy Cross's long history as a college of liberal arts. What are they talking about? We'll find out. Contrary to the claim of Holy Cross Dean of Students Michelle Murray that Heather McDonald's recent talk at the college embodied a subtext that discrimination no longer exists, or at least that we should not be bothered by it. Neither the lecture nor the book on which it is based exhibited any such message. And this refers to why our students objected to Heather McDonald letters from December 4th. Rather, Miss McDonald argued, and Miss Murray agrees, that American college students, especially at expensive and well-endowed institutions like Holy Cross, are among the most privileged individuals in history by virtue of their unfettered access to knowledge. Far from being discriminated against while in college, those students, regardless of their racial or ethnic background or sexual orientation, are indeed surrounded by well-meaning faculty who want all of them to succeed. Ms. Murray disingenuously dismisses the interference with Ms. McDonald's talk as a 3-minute interruption. In fact, the protesting students planned in advance to occupy as many seats in the small lecture hall as possible to prevent students and faculty who were interested in hearing the talk from doing so. This happens at CSU. I see it in the college paper. Somebody complained about a recent event where Charlie Kirk and Donald Trump Jr. were there, and they gave them a very small room, and then a bunch of people occupied the seats, and then there's a bunch of people protesting outside, and there's a lot of intimidation that goes on. But of course, it's not intimidation, it's activism. Yeah. Campus security officers, doubtless acting on instructions from higher authorities, didn't allow any of those who remained outside to enter in their place. In a sense, the strategy worked, but neither the strategy nor Miss Murray's letter can obscure the fact that this restriction of academic freedom was one of the most shameful events in Holy Cross's long history as a college of liberal arts. This from Professor David Lewis Schaefer at the College of the Holy Cross. So we could refer to the original article, or original letter, but I'm not gonna. Let's see. Incredulous after reading Heather McDonald's piece, I contacted Holy Cross seeking verification of the events described in her article, their side of the story, if you will. Surely, men and women, for and with others, should not be so rude and thin-skinned to act in a manner described. There had to be an explanation. The college alumni giving officer responded with a statement by the Dean of Students, Michelle Murray, claiming that Holy Cross students were responding to Miss McDonald's premise that students of color do not belong at elite institutions. In response, I have asked 3 times the college for documentation of this remarkable claim and excuse. As of this writing, Holy Cross has responded but hasn't answered my question. This is alumni from the school, class of 78. As a proud Holy Cross alumna, I was shocked to read Dean Murray's claim that the college's students were making use of their own free speech to combat objectionable ideas by protesting Miss McDonald's visit. Metaphorically plugging one's ears and la-la-lying over Miss McDonald's point of view is not only childish, but it goes against everything Jesuit higher education stands for. Listening to others and making an effort to meet them halfway. At least that's what I got at my time at Holy Cross, but moments like this make me wonder if perhaps I misunderstood. From the class of 15. Does the college have a list of approved messages and non-objectionable ideas? This is a liberal arts college, says Hal Hunt. Free speech is now defined as the right to interrupt others' speech, a perfect sophistry worthy of George Orwell, from Dale Fruman. Yeah, so there's just this tendency, this is what concerns me, it's like, I think people with this worldview where they make excuses for this kind of behavior, if it wasn't clear, there's just this trend of students, when you have a speaker that comes on campus and they say conservative things, they consider it their duty as an activist to go out and protest and disrupt, Maxine Waters style. And it's like, well, you should examine your methodology, because there's certain things that should indicate to you that maybe you are potentially full of shit. And one of those is, can I be proven wrong? And another way of saying that is my claim falsifiable? And it looks like often these things are deliberately framed in a way where you just can't be wrong, because whatever you're saying is not worth arguing, because you end up framing it in a way where the person who you're objecting to is dog whistling. They're saying something that they never actually said. For example, they apparently accused Heather McDonald of saying that people of color shouldn't be at the campus, which I very much doubt that she said. And the other, one of those letters was like, where's the evidence that she ever said this? And they never produced it. But usually the answer is, oh, well, she's dog whistling. So here's the situation that you get into. Everything that I say is an objectionable dog whistle, and everything that you say is pure activism, and is just glorious. And it just seems like if things get framed that way often enough, maybe you should look at yourself. There's something called self-deception, and the way that you avoid that, if you even have it as a category. Like some people, I don't think have the idea that you can deceive yourself, because they're very up in their feelings, and I'm just rambling on at this point. But like it just really concerns me, because it's like you're getting out of touch, and it's like there should have been a number of indicators that you were getting out of touch. Like, my idea is that I have a certain kind of temperament, and that temperament can cause me not to see things clearly that come from other perspectives. And sometimes I miss something, and I'm not arrogant enough to believe that just with my own, worldview, I can capture everything. So that's why I need to talk with other people. But I think if you have this extreme subjectivist worldview, you think that you are just all up in your feelings and your way of seeing things, and everybody else does the exact same thing. So what's the point of dialogue? It's just battle it out. Battle it out against people. And I don't know, that's unfortunate. We could do better. We could do so much better. So just a summary of my feelings on this one. Like, if you are making claims and they can't be proven wrong, you need to reformulate your argument. I mean, that's one thing. I'm sure there were other things, but I'm just about out of coffee. And I'm just about out of time. So thank you for joining Governor Sulak for this edition of, I guess, the Ready Room. I'm not in the Purple Room. But yeah, have a good day. See you guys later.